You're 17 years old, and you're exhausted. Not the kind of tired that disappears after a good night's sleep. The kind that settles into your bones. The kind that makes your eyes burn. The kind that makes every hour feel heavier than the last. Because you haven't slept properly in days. Maybe weeks. Nobody knows exactly how long anymore. Not even you. Your parents keep begging you to rest. Your friends think you're being dramatic. Doctors can't find anything physically wrong, but none of that matters. Because you're terrified, not of school, not of getting sick, not of dying. You're terrified of falling asleep, because every time you close your eyes, something is waiting for you. At first, nobody takes you seriously, so you start fighting sleep. Caffeine pills, coffee, anything to stay awake. Anything to keep your eyes open a little longer. Then one night, your father wakes up to screaming. Not shouting, not talking, screaming. The kind of scream that instantly tells you something terrible is happening. He runs to your room, throws open the door, and finds you lying in bed, motionless. By morning, you're dead. And nobody can explain why. Tonight, we are going to talk about the real story that inspired Freddy Krueger. Welcome to the podcast You Can't Unhear. This story begins long before Freddy Krueger ever existed. Long before Elm Street. Long before The Glove. Long before the nightmares. It starts with war. The Vietnam War. And more specifically, the secret war happening next door in Laos. During the 1970s, many Hmong families were forced to flee persecution after the Laotian Civil War. They escaped their homes, crossed borders, and eventually resettled in countries like the United States. For many families, America represented safety, a fresh start, a chance to finally sleep peacefully again. But something strange began happening after they arrived. Something doctors couldn't explain. One of those refugees was a teenager named Daniel. He lived in California with his family. By all accounts, his life was improving. His father was a physician. They lived in a supportive Hmong community. The future looked promising. Then Daniel became terrified of sleep. Not normal anxiety. Not nightmares. Something much deeper, much darker. He began telling his family that something would come for him if he fell asleep. Something waiting inside his dreams. Something dangerous. At first, people dismissed it. Who wouldn't? What parent wouldn't assume it was stress, or trauma, or imagination? But Daniel was serious. Dead serious. He started taking caffeine pills, making coffee in secret, doing everything possible to stay awake. Because in his mind, falling asleep meant dying. Then one night, his father heard screaming, and by the time the family reached him, Daniel was dead. Perfectly healthy. No explanation. No warning signs. Nothing. And here's where the story becomes truly disturbing, because Daniel wasn't alone. Over the next several years, more than 100 young Hmong men died under remarkably similar circumstances. Healthy. Young. No serious medical history. Gone overnight. Doctors eventually gave it a name: Sudden Unexpected Nocturnal Death Syndrome, SUNDS. A name sounds comforting, like understanding. But honestly, they still had no idea what was actually causing it. The name simply meant, we know they died in their sleep, but we don't know why. Some researchers believed stress and trauma from war played a role. Others suspected hidden heart conditions. But one theory captured public imagination. A terrifying theory: the nightmare theory. What if these young men had become so frightened during sleep that their hearts literally stopped? What if something inside their dreams was killing them? One of the people reading those newspaper articles was a filmmaker named Wes Craven, and something about the stories stayed with him. Because imagine hearing that. Healthy young men refusing to sleep, then dying anyway. Not from disease. Not from violence. Not from accidents. But seemingly from whatever waited for them after they closed their eyes. Craven became obsessed with the idea. Not the medical mystery, the horror behind it. What if the nightmare theory was true? What if there really was something inside dreams? Something intelligent? Something cruel? Something feeding on fear? And that's where Freddy Krueger was born. Not as a movie monster, but as an answer to a terrifying question. What if nightmares could kill? This is where things get fascinating. Because Freddy wasn't designed randomly. Every part of him was carefully built to make people uncomfortable. The red and green sweater. Colours that are difficult for the human eye to process together. The razor glove. Inspired by claws, predators, ancient fears of being torn apart. The burned face. A mask made from flesh itself. Even the fedora came from a memory Wes Craven carried since childhood. A frightening stranger who once stared directly at him through a window. A moment that haunted him for decades. Freddy became a collection of fears. Not just one fear. All of them. Combined. Freddy wasn't the first nightmare monster. Not even close. Because humans have been describing something similar for thousands of years. Long before horror movies, people spoke about creatures that attacked during sleep. Demons sitting on chests. Witches visiting bedrooms. Dark figures standing beside beds. Today, we often call it sleep paralysis. That terrifying state between sleeping and waking, where your mind is conscious, but your body refuses to move. And across cultures, people report remarkably similar experiences. A presence. A figure. A crushing weight. Something watching them from the darkness. Ancient Mesopotamians wrote about it. Scandinavians feared it. Japanese folklore contains it. Brazilian folklore contains it. Every culture seems to have its own version, its own explanation, its own Freddy Krueger. I think that's why Freddy became more than just another horror villain, because Jason can be avoided. Michael Myers can be escaped. Most monsters exist somewhere outside of you. But Freddy lives somewhere much harder to escape. Inside your own mind. Eventually, everybody has to sleep. No matter how fast you run. No matter how many lights you leave on. No matter how afraid you are. And maybe that's why the original Nightmare on Elm Street felt so different. It wasn't about a killer chasing teenagers. It was about losing the one place that's supposed to be safe: your dreams. The real tragedy is that the young men who inspired the story never got answers. Their families never got answers. Even today, Sons remains one of medicine's strangest mysteries. But somewhere between that mystery, those nightmares, and an article buried in a newspaper, one of horror's greatest monsters was born. That's the unsettling part. Because Freddy Krueger may be fictional, but the fear that created him, that was completely real. Have a sweet dream tonight, guys. I'll see you on the next episode of the podcast You Can't Unhear.